The galaxy had long since been divided into sprawling empires, each one led by a race that prided itself on its strength, intellect, or ancient wisdom. Among these powers, the humans were initially seen as little more than a curiosity. A young species, unremarkable by the standards of the stars, they had just begun their journey into space. Their homeworld was a planet of blue oceans and sprawling continents, a world of warriors, poets, and philosophers. The other galactic powers looked upon humanity as nothing more than an emerging species, their potential far from realized, and their military forces dismissed as primitive in comparison to those of the older, more established civilizations. But what the galaxy didn't know was that humanity's true strength lay not in advanced technology, nor in their massive fleets, but in the unyielding will of their people. It began with the Terran Expeditionary Forces, a small human fleet that had been dispatched to negotiate peace with an ancient and powerful alien race, the Zul'Thrai. The Zul'Thrai were towering, insectoid beings whose crystalline exoskeletons could withstand most energy blasts, and whose military had crushed entire civilizations across the galaxy. They were proud and indifferent, seeing themselves as the apex of existence. When humanity arrived, the Zul'Thrai were less than impressed. The Terran ships were clunky, their weapons relatively weak, and their tactics rudimentary at best. The Zul'Thrai offered them an ultimatum: join their empire or be exterminated. But the humans, unlike the other species, had never known surrender. They had fought and bled for their freedom on their homeworld, and they had faced worse odds in the past. The human ambassadors, when they were allowed to speak, offered something unexpected, a challenge, not for negotiation but for survival. "Let's see who is truly the strongest," the human commander said, her voice steady and calm despite the overwhelming threat before her. "One-on-one, a test of will. If we lose, we submit. If we win, we walk free." The Zul'Thrai, amused at the audacity of the request, agreed. They believed it would be an easy victory. But humanity had a way of fighting that no one expected. They fought not just for survival, but for everything they held dear. When the battle began, it wasn't just about strength or technology. It was about the human spirit. The Terran soldier, barely a fraction of the Zul'Thrai's size, stood face to face with the towering warrior. The first clash was brutal, the human's energy blade barely scratching the surface of the Zul'Thrai's hardened armor. But it wasn't the first blow that mattered. It was the second and the third, and then the fourth. The human didn't stop. The Zul'Thrai tried to crush the human under its weight, to overwhelm it with sheer force, but the human would not yield. Every strike the alien delivered was met with a resilience that was incomprehensible to them. No matter how badly the human was injured, they kept fighting, pushing forward with an intensity that seemed to draw from some deep, unexplainable well of determination. It was not the might of the human soldier that won the battle, but their refusal to accept defeat. In the end, the Zul'Thrai warrior fell, unable to overcome the relentless, unpredictable nature of humanity's will. When the Terran forces were allowed to leave, they returned to their ship not as conquerors, but as survivors, wounded, battered, but unbroken. The Zul'Thrai, who had once seen themselves as the pinnacle of all life, had underestimated humanity's defining trait, an unrelenting resolve. It was a resolve that had been forged in the fires of war, through centuries of struggle and survival against overwhelming odds. Humanity, it seemed, was not a species to be measured by size or technology alone. They were measured by their capacity to endure, adapt, and fight with everything they had, no matter the odds. Word of this victory spread quickly across the galaxy, and it became clear that the humans were a species unlike any other. Empires and races that had once dismissed them now regarded them with a mixture of fear and respect. It wasn't just that humanity had proven they could win against the strongest warriors. It was that they had shown that victory wasn't about strength. It was about persistence, about pushing through even when there was no reason to hope. Over time, humanity's reputation spread throughout the galaxy. The Mivik, a race known for their brutal and efficient armies, were the next to underestimate the Terrans. When they invaded a human colony, expecting an easy conquest, they found their worst nightmare. Humans did not fear death. They fought back with an intensity that unnerved even the Mivik, who were accustomed to terrifying their enemies into submission. The humans never fought like other species. They didn't rely on overwhelming numbers or raw power. They fought with cunning, with precision, and with a willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good. They adapted to any environment, learned from every defeat, and grew stronger after every loss. The Mivik were forced to retreat, their forces shattered by guerrilla tactics that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. But the real turning point came when humanity was forced to face the Andron Legion, a warlike race of cyborgs who had conquered countless worlds and reduced entire civilizations to ashes. The Andron Legion was infamous for its cold, methodical strategy and its devastating technology, which was far beyond anything humanity had. For years, the Andron had systematically wiped out entire colonies, their machines unstoppable, their soldiers without emotion. When the humans faced the Andron for the first time in battle, it was on the outskirts of a distant system. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed in every measurable way. Yet, when the battle began, something strange happened. The Andron machines, so used to calculating every move of their enemies, found themselves faced with tactics they could not predict. Humans fought unpredictably, using the environment to their advantage, creating traps, using subterfuge, and even turning the Andron's own technology against them. In the end, the Andron Legion was not defeated by superior weapons or tactics, but by the very unpredictability of humanity's resolve. It was this refusal to ever back down, to ever give in, that shattered the Andron's perfect systems. The Legion, unable to process a threat they could not predict, fell apart at the seams. The humans had won, not with power or technology, but with something far more dangerous: their endless capacity for innovation and their unwillingness to accept anything less than victory. Now the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They were not a species defined by their weapons, their ships, or their vast fleets. They were a species defined by their unrelenting will to survive, to fight, and to win. Against all odds, humanity had proven itself to be the galaxy's most terrifying warrior species, not because of what they had, but because of what they were. A species that, no matter how many times it was knocked down, would always rise again. And when they rose, they would fight with everything they had. The galaxy would remember humanity not for its strength or its conquests, but for the sheer force of its spirit. After the fall of the Andron Legion, the galaxy trembled. The Terran victory had sent shockwaves through the stars. The once dismissed human race had become a beacon of defiance, an example of the impossible made possible. But for humanity, this was only the beginning. They had no intention of stopping. In the aftermath, an uneasy peace settled across the galaxy. The empires that had once seen humanity as an insignificant, even expendable species, now turned their attention to the Terran systems. The Zul'Thrai, the Mivik, and the Andron had all suffered crushing defeats, their pride broken. They were not the only ones. Other races, from the cunning, tech-worshipping Quelari to the ancient, bioengineered Zinthi, had been forced to reassess their views on humanity. And they all arrived at the same conclusion: humanity was dangerous, perhaps more dangerous than any of them had ever imagined. In a private council chamber, the leaders of the galaxy's most powerful factions gathered. The Zul'Thrai had been humiliated, their empire tarnished by their inability to defeat the humans. The Mivik were fearful of a resurgence, and the Andron Legion, now shattered and broken, had retreated into their distant worlds to rebuild. A long, drawn-out discussion began. What to do about humanity? Should they destroy them once and for all? Or should they try to subdue them through politics, covert operations, or even alliance? But there was one fundamental truth they could not escape: humans would never be contained. Time and time again, the Terran race had proven that the one thing they would never do was submit. The galaxy's powers, in their arrogance, made the critical mistake of believing that the humans had simply gotten lucky. They dismissed the victories as anomalies, the result of sheer willpower alone. But they failed to recognize the true nature of humanity's strength: their capacity for innovation. On every battlefield, whether in the field of war or in the halls of diplomacy, humanity was always thinking several steps ahead. Their ingenuity had driven their advancement. It was why, when faced with technologically superior foes, they adapted faster than anyone had thought possible. The moment they encountered a new threat, they studied it, learned from it, and came up with new ways to overcome it. This relentless drive to solve problems was in their very DNA. Take the war against the Zinthi, for example. The Zinthi had been the galaxy's rulers for millennia. Their bioengineered bodies were practically invulnerable, their technology centuries ahead of human designs, and their warriors were a nightmare to face. But when the Zinthi made the mistake of invading a remote human colony on the fringe of the galaxy, they found themselves in the midst of something unexpected. The human colonists, far from being defenseless, had been preparing for just such an invasion. Over the years, they had built not just defensive networks, but entire systems designed to sabotage the most advanced technology. When the Zinthi arrived, they were met with a planet-wide digital blackout. Their weapons systems malfunctioned, their advanced armor failed to work, and their ships were suddenly adrift, floating in an atmosphere they had never been designed to operate in. The Xinthi's elite warriors, normally invincible on the battlefield, were thrown into confusion. Unable to adapt to the primitive, yet strangely effective tactics of the humans, they were picked off one by one. The human strategy was simple but devastating. Target the one thing the Xinthi had never had to contend with: disruption. The humans didn't need the latest in cutting-edge technology. What they had was an ability to think outside the box, to use whatever tools they had at their disposal, and to turn the tables on their would-be conquerors. When the Xinthi's fleet finally retreated, it wasn't just because of the unexpected resistance they encountered. It was because they had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to survive. The Xinthi had been prepared to crush humanity through sheer force, but they had forgotten one critical factor. Humanity was a species that didn't just fight for survival, they fought to win. As the human colonies grew and their military strength became undeniable, the galaxy began to see a troubling pattern. Humanity's enemies had never been defeated by raw power or superior numbers alone. Instead, they had been defeated by the most terrifying weapon of all: human creativity. The next phase of the Terran rise came when the Valthorians, a race of cunning, reptilian warlords known for their ruthless tactics and vast fleets, turned their attention to human space. The Valthorians had conquered countless star systems, their strategic genius unrivaled in the galaxy. They thought that humanity, with its relatively small fleet and lack of advanced weapons, would be easy prey. But what the Valthorians didn't count on was humanity's mastery of asymmetrical warfare. Instead of meeting them in a direct confrontation, the humans launched a series of hit-and-run attacks, always staying one step ahead. They mined asteroid fields, hacked enemy ships, and sent decoy fleets to draw the Valthorians into traps. It was guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale, and it bewildered the Valthorian commanders. For every move they made, the humans countered it with something new, something unexpected. Then, the humans did something that no one could have predicted. They took one of the Valthorian warships, a flagship, and reversed-engineered it. Using their newfound knowledge of Valthorian technology, the Terran engineers began producing hybrid warships, combining their own innovations with stolen Valthorian technology. The humans, who had once been seen as primitive, were now the masters of their enemies' advanced designs. With their new fleets, they struck at the Valthorian homeworld, catching the reptilian empire off guard and crippling their defenses. It was a brutal, overwhelming blow. The Valthorians were forced to sign a peace treaty, and humanity's reputation as the most unpredictable and terrifying warrior race spread throughout the galaxy. Even in the face of superior technology, the humans were unstoppable. They had mastered the art of warfare not through strength alone, but through the ruthless pursuit of knowledge and the constant reinvention of their strategies. They had shown the galaxy something fundamental. In a universe where power was often measured by size, speed, or technology, the true measure of strength lay in adaptability, creativity, and a refusal to back down. It was then that the galaxy began to realize the truth that no one could deny. Humanity was not merely a warrior species. They were a species of survivors, of innovators, and of relentless fighters. In a galaxy full of ancient empires, they had proven one undeniable fact: that no matter how much time passed, no matter how many enemies they faced, humanity would always rise again. And when they did, they would bring with them the full fury of their spirit. The galaxy may have underestimated humanity once, but they would never make that mistake again. For humanity, it was never just about fighting wars. It was about winning them. The Terran victories had rippled across the galaxy, leaving a trail of devastation and awe. Empires that once felt invincible now spoke in hushed tones about the humans, the species that had defied expectations at every turn. The human race, once seen as insignificant and weak, had become the unchallenged warriors of the stars. But victory alone was not enough. The humans understood that power, no matter how mighty, could always be threatened. There was no such thing as absolute peace in the galaxy, only the promise of temporary reprieves between the next battle. However, after their resounding triumph over the Valthorians, the human leadership found themselves at a crossroads. They could have turned inward, focusing solely on their own growth, security, and expansion. They could have built their own empire, exacting revenge on those who had sought to destroy them. But humanity was a species defined by more than just the need to survive. They were defined by their ideals, their capacity to reach beyond themselves, and their desire to push the boundaries of the possible. And so, instead of seeking revenge or dominating other races, humanity sought a new path, a path of unity. They offered peace to those who had fought against them, extending a hand where others might have drawn a blade. The galaxy, though wary and suspicious of this shift, was left with no choice but to listen. The message was simple: join us or stand aside. We seek no conquest, but we will not stand by while others seek our destruction. Our strength lies not in our power, but in our unity. Together, we can face whatever comes next. Alone, we will fall. At first, the galaxy laughed. The notion of unity seemed naive, even foolish. The powerful empires had existed for millennia, each of them proud and set in their ways. But humanity, in their persistence, began to prove that they were not a fleeting force. Their leadership, their culture, and their resolve spoke louder than any weapon. Slowly, reluctantly, the races of the galaxy began to see the truth in humanity's offer. The Zul'Thrai, once the arrogant conquerors of worlds, began to understand that their endless expansion had no purpose. The Andren, their vast, soulless war machines, began to question whether there was more to existence than the cold logic of conquest. Even the Zinthi, who had believed themselves to be the pinnacle of bioengineering, came to realize that they could not survive by technological supremacy alone. It was their interactions with the humans that made them see their own limitations. One by one, the galaxy's great powers agreed to meet humanity halfway. It was not an easy process. The old grudges, the deep-seated fears, and the century-old hatreds could not be wiped away overnight. But humanity's willingness to forgive, to reach out and offer a chance at peace, made all the difference. And in time, a fragile alliance formed. It was an alliance forged not through the sheer might of the human military, but through the strength of their ideals, their insistence on unity and cooperation. But even as peace began to spread, there were those who could not forget humanity's rise. The Sons of the Fallen, a radical faction of the Andren Legion, still clung to their belief in the supremacy of their cyborg race. The Valthorian warlords, though pacified, were not fully subdued, and some factions within their empire still whispered of a return to their old ways. These rogue elements were dangerous, and humanity knew that true peace would only be achieved when these pockets of resistance were dealt with. The final test of humanity's place in the galaxy came when a rogue faction of the Valthorians attempted to destroy the peace they had worked so hard to establish. They launched a surprise attack on the Galactic Council, aiming to strike at the heart of the fragile unity the humans had fought to create. The attack was swift and brutal, but what the Valthorians didn't understand was that humanity was no longer alone in their fight. The other galactic races, those who had once fought against humanity, now stood beside them. The Zul'Thrai, the Andren, the Mivik, all had come to recognize the truth. Humanity was not just a species of warriors. They were the glue that held the galaxy together. Their relentless pursuit of peace, their ability to rise from the ashes of destruction, and their unwavering belief in unity had forged something new. A coalition that transcended old borders, ancient grudges, and long-held fears. The battle was fierce. The Valthorians, with their unmatched fleets and brutal strategies, struck quickly, but they were met with something they could not defeat: the collective will of a united galaxy, led by humanity. The humans fought with a ferocity that was born of necessity, but also out of a deep love for the galaxy they had fought so hard to protect. They knew that this fight, like all the others before it, was not just for their survival, it was for the survival of all. In the end, the Valthorians were driven back, their coup crushed. Their empire fractured, and the rogue elements were eradicated. The galaxy, though scarred, had been saved. And humanity, once seen as nothing more than a curiosity, was now at the heart of a new era, an era of unity and shared purpose. In the years that followed, humanity's role as the galaxy's most terrifying warrior species began to shift. Their strength was no longer defined by the weapons they wielded or the battles they won. It was defined by their capacity to lead, to inspire, and to bring together the most unlikely of allies. They were no longer feared for their power, but respected for their resilience, their adaptability, and their refusal to ever back down. The galaxy had learned a hard truth. Humanity, despite their flaws, had proven that they could endure anything. And that, in the end, was what made them the most terrifying species in the galaxy. Not just because they fought to win, but because they would never stop fighting for a better future. And so the legacy of humanity endured, not through conquest, but through the strength of their spirit. The galaxy knew one thing for certain: the next time they faced humanity, they would not just be facing a warrior species. They would be facing a force that could never be defeated, not through war, nor through time, nor through the fearsome challenges that awaited them in the future. For humanity had already proven that no force in the galaxy, no empire, no alien, or even time itself could ever break them. And that was what made them the most terrifying species of all.